First off, I want to say, holy crap! One of my videos I released in the past few weeks broke over 1,000 views. That's never happened on this channel before. Surprising, yes, I know. Normally we never break 100, but it broke 1,000! I know that was an accident, and I know it's a fluke, and I doubt it's going to happen again, but I don't care how it happened. That's a cool thing. Wow, people actually clicked on it, even accidentally, long enough for a few to get algorithmed in, or whatever they call it. That's pretty cool. And I guess I'm going to have to discuss all 4 Toy Story movies, instead of just talking about the latest one. Because yes, I did recently watch the 4th Toy Story movie, and I do have words for it. But I also recently rewatched all 3 Toy Story films leading up to the 4th one, so that I had a fresh mind on the franchise when I made the 4th video. The Toy Story 4 video, that is. But apparently, seeing 1,000 views on that Toy Story 2 for the PlayStation 1 video, I guess I have to talk about all four of them, each individually, starting with the first one. So expect that to come soon. But today, we're going to be talking about Oddity. Oddity is an oddity. I found it, and I didn't pick it up. I looked at it on a shelf for quite a while, and then waited for it to drop in price, and then it dropped in price again, and then it dropped in price again. And I kept watching it, thinking, you know, I doubt it's one of the scariest movies of the year. I doubt it's actually going to be this super duper scary. And then, well, I finally ended up procuring it. We have a certified fresh little thingamajiggy here, and we have IFC films. Now, I have a couple IFC films videos in my collection. Most of them were really indie and really not that good, but when I looked at this one, it is an oddity among the IFC library. It is very good. Now, the closest thing I could compare this to in terms of cinematographic camera skill, camera intellect, like the intelligence behind the camera angles, and the way a shot is built, and the way the tension is built, not through the spooky sound effects or the rising tone of the spooky music. No, it's the camera angles. It's the way the camera sets up the frame. Sometimes it switches to handheld camera when you might want the viewer to think, oh crap, is there somebody behind you? And then the person turns and no, there's nobody there. The handheld camera was a fake out. All of that with no spooky music playing. It was perfect. I loved that stuff. I love that type of atmosphere. That type of atmosphere in a scary movie, in a horror movie, is like the sweetest Gordon Ramsay, and I ate it all up. It was a delectable delight of horror-tastic spectacle. This isn't one of those typical horror movies where you get a bunch of jump scares. There's 1 or 2 in here, and then they have camera setups where the actual atmosphere of the shot and tone and the scene is building up towards what you would expect to be a jump scare, and the jump scare doesn't actually happen, or there is a sort of jump scare, but there's no frightening, startling sound happening. It's just a fake out. And that really does build that tension, that builds that anxiety, far more than an actual spooky stunt will do. A little startling jump scare would do. The closest I would come to compare this with would be Hereditary in terms of its type of camera angles and all that stuff. Because the Hereditary doesn't really do too many jump scares in that regard either. And people praise the heck out of Hereditary. I think Hereditary is a little overrated. I do. I think that's a little bit overrated. But I will praise it for the cinematographic qualities, intellectual camera angles, and building the scene, building the scare through atmosphere alone, rather than the spooky music and the startling sound effects and all of that stuff. If you've seen the dime a dozen movies from the early 2000s, where there's just sudden startles, like somebody could tap someone on the shoulder from behind and you'd have a jump scare sound. It's just a fake out jump scare, startling sound effect. You get oversaturated with that crap. You get oversaturated with that crap for over a decade, and then finally, after a decade of that, people start to learn. People start to learn that kind of stuff is kind of a little bit tired. We're tired of that. We don't want to do that anymore. So this is an indie horror picture that doesn't do that stuff. It does it once, but that's just to set up the fake outs for the next future things. And the story is also pretty good. We have two twin ladies. One of them is the former wife of the man whose name is, I think his name is Det. He's a doctor at an insane asylum, and his wife ends up dying at the start of the film, and we think it's because of a break-in by this man with a glass eye of some sort. And we think he's the guy who broke into her home, but really we learn that he's just there to warn her that somebody went into her house while she was out looking for her stuff in the car. So she was pretty weirded out by him, because of course he's like, it's in the middle of the night, he's a creepy, disheveled man with a glass eye looking like that. Of course I'd be a little bit scared of him too, but hey, there really was somebody in the house, and she really did perish. So then we cut to her twin sister, who is a blind psychic who runs a cursed objects shop similar to the Conjuring series, where she's gathered a whole little antique store full of cursed objects, and she leaves the curses on the objects to deter theft. Because if people end up stealing any trinkets in her shop, the item is cursed, and they're gonna have a bad time until they return it, and usually with payment. So she usually releases the curse on the object upon purchase. So if somebody comes in to purchase one of the little trinkets in her shop, she will remove the curse upon purchase. That is her way of deterring that type of stuff. So that's a pretty cool little tidbit there. And eventually we have her wanting to meet up with Det, the husband of her dead sister, and he hands her the glass eye that belonged to that dude, and we learn that dude here was a patient at his insane asylum, and he's been killed recently, so he handed her the glass eye because she wanted it, because, she wanted to have a piece of the dude, blah blah blah. And we learn that she can use her psychic powers to learn the experiences of the person with personal effects, usually stuff with skin contact, like rings, watches, and stuff like that. This one is set particularly as a very personal effect item, so she was able to see through his eyes to see all of this stuff and learn the truth about what happened to her sister. And she ends up making this elaborate plan to get revenge on the people who really killed her sister. And she brings this wooden golem, this incredibly creepy wooden golem, and I love the way the camera sets this guy up. It doesn't set him up. That's the best part. She arrives at Det's house, this creepy house, the house that her sister died in, unannounced, to offer to spend the night. Det works nights, so Det goes off to the insane asylum to do that, and his new girlfriend is stuck in the house with her because she can't find her key. She wanted to leave because she keeps seeing the ghost of Det's ex-wife, the dead wife, in the house, and she thinks it's just because of sleep deprivation, but she doesn't sleep in this house at night because it's a very spooky place. It's a very spooky place out in the middle of nowhere. Not too many people would be too comfortable being alone out here, especially with one of these guys easily able to kill her. Apparently, that's what she learned from. That's what she apparently knew. That's what the captain thought. Everybody thought he killed the twin sister, but really it was somebody else. So she brings this gift that belonged to her mother, the psychic lady. She brings a gift that belonged to her mother to Dad's house. Dad opens this big trunk, and we don't see what's inside the trunk. But apparently this dude was inside the trunk, and he's like, oh, well, thanks. And then he tells his girlfriend that he'll get rid of it as soon as the psychic leaves. But just deal with it for now. And then later on, after Dad leaves, and we have the girlfriend and the psychic blind lady, yeah, she's blind, at the house alone. The blind lady says, oh, so you're gonna stay? We're great, the three of us can get acquainted. And I was like, why did she say the three of us? Then I realized in the back corner of the shot, just almost out of view, was somebody sitting at the table. Somebody was sitting at the... They didn't even introduce what was in the chest, the little treasure trunk. They didn't even show us what was in there. And then we see this thing sitting at the dinner table. It's just sitting there with his mouth open like that. His eyes all... he's just sitting there with his hands flat on the table like that. And he's just out in the corner of the camera. He's always in the corner of the camera, just out of view, out of focus, where the focus is on something else, and you can easily miss him every single time, but then he would always double take and say, what the heck is that? And they don't pay too much attention to it until a lot later in the film. That is some really good tension building. And one of the best jump scares with this thing. The psychic lady falls asleep, and the girlfriend goes upstairs to try to go to bed. She's on her phone talking to Det, though, saying how the psychic lady's really creepy, telling her all sorts of creepy stories, saying how an orderly who works for Det was the one who actually killed her sister, and not the patient with the class I. And Dad's going like, well, that's all crazy. Well, we'll deal with that when I get home, blah, 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 blah. And they hang up. And then she looks over the railing, because she's standing by the railing looking down over the floor below, which is actually being able to look directly down at the dinner table. She looks down, and the golem is looking up at her. Mouth still wide open, by the way. No sudden scary sudden jump scare. There's no jump scare at all. There's no sound. It's completely quiet. She looks over the railing, and it's looking up at her. In all of the previous shots, he wasn't looking up. He was looking straight ahead. He was now looking up. She jumps, drops her phone. The phone falls onto the ground and shatters. That's one way we could set up her being unable to call for help when the more scarier stuff happens to her. And then she looks back, she double takes, and the golem is now looking straight ahead again. And she wonders maybe she's just sleep deprived. She didn't actually see the golem move, she just got jolted. So she tries to go back to bed now that her phone's broken and she can't actually do anything with it. But first she checks out the golem. She looks into the golem. There's like 5 holes in the back of the golem's head. She pulls out stuff that's in the golem. There's a tooth in one of the holes. There's a vial of blood in one of the holes. And there's pictures in the other holes. Like little pictures with little tied up pieces of string rolled up in the little holes. So she pulls them out with a pair of tweezers and she looks at the pictures. It's a picture of 2 twin sisters. It's a picture of another thing. And then their vial of blood and all that other. She's freaked out about all this stuff. And suddenly the psychic wakes up. She's blind, but she's staring right at her. And she just says, put it back. There's no sudden jump scare, dun dun dun, spooky sound, music, nothing. It is still quiet. It is still quiet when she says, put it back. The jump scare is her voice saying, "Put it back." There's no done, wherever the camera just suddenly jolts to her. No, the jump scare is her voice. And that was really well put, too. She ends up being portrayed really creepy. I loved all of those types of setups. It is a fantastic film that I don't want to say any more of what happens later on after this, but I have to tell you, you have to see Oddity.